What's going on, guys? It's Tony with Urban Girl Scout Media, living the dream as always, and going to go off the rails today on a topic that has been flying through the Magic the Gathering social media world, and that is banning cards and cards that need to be banned in standard. So there's some really great content creators that have made some videos with, I think I've seen up to 20 cards in one video. I have my own suggestions about these cards, but I'm not going to go that deep into it. I'm going to keep it to 5 cards that I think should be banned, the reason why, and I have one honorable mention. Also, within that 5-card slot, there will be one of these two needs to be banned, not both, just one of the two. So let's get right into it, and we'll go through. We'll start with the honorable mention. And that honorable mention is Growth Spiral. So, I think this was one of the cards when this set came out I identified as a pretty interesting looking card. Growth Spiral is an instant, 1 green, 1 blue, and it says, draw a card. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. And it is a common. So, the reason this is on the list is because, well, you can see that just about everything about this card screams issue. And if there really was a research and development department at Wizards doing their job, they should have been fired on this one alone. So you give Simic a 2-casting instant, a common no less, where they draw a card and they get to put a land card from their hand onto the battlefield. Not tapped, at instant speed. That in itself screams issues, and that in itself is why I believe playtesting was not done on this card. Simic is not a color combo or a guild that needs any help getting ramp, so doing that with this just felt stupid. Okay, so let's go to the first card that I really do have an issue with, and that is Wilderness Reclamation. 3 colorless, 1 green. This is an enchantment. It's an uncommon. And it says, at the beginning of your end step, untap all lands you control. Now, instantly, you should be able to see that you can stack mana. And, you know, Ikoria just came out. And if I'm not mistaken, it has a pretty heavy push for cards with flash. Keep that in mind. Also, instants are pretty dangerous with this card. So, I actually think this card... This card's okay to have been printed. I don't think it should have been printed in a standard set. I think it should have been put in one of the Commander products, and it would have done just fine. This, again, research and development just kind of dropped the ball here, and either didn't do anything or didn't test this the right way. I mean, I don't know what the excuse is, but one way or the other, this is a card that truly belongs in a supplemental product, not in a standard product. So next we have good old Torbran, Thane of Red Fell, and this is a mouthful. So here we go. 1 colorless, 3 red. This is a legendary creature, a dwarf noble. He's a 2/4, and it says if a red source you control would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage +2. This is one of the cards I identified from Throne of Eldraine as, ooh, that's juicy. Now, I want to put a few cards into play here with what this does. First off, this makes a shock 4 damage. Doesn't matter what it's hitting, it is 4 damage. Your 1/1 creatures are 3 1s. That's real. That's a big deal. And I think that because they had, is it Cavalcade of Calamity or whatever it is, that and this together, I think is a little bit too much. This is actually a card that I'd be okay with if it was 1 damage, if it was a lower toughness creature, or if you want to keep it exactly like this, again, you have Commander. I think this is a really good Commander card. It's doing great right now in Standard, but once it rotates out, it'll find a nice little home in some burn decks there. Torbran, though, should have been put in one of these supplemental products, or just reduce the power, or the toughness a little bit. Reduce the damage it's going to do. Put another condition. I mean, there has to be something else here. I do enjoy this card and I do enjoy playing it, but that doesn't mean I don't recognize the issues with it. Okay, so Teferi Time Raveler. This is probably the one that every content creator's got on their list for sure. There's probably a few others, but this one I wouldn't be surprised if everybody hates this card. So, this legendary planeswalker is one colorless, one white, one blue, and this is when they were making the static abilities as well with these planeswalkers. So it has 4 loyalty and says each opponent can cast spells only anytime they could cast a sorcery. So even your instants lose that ability. And has a +1 until your next turn. You may cast sorcery spells as though they had flash. The -3, return up to 1 target artifact, creature, or enchantment to its owner's hand. Draw a card. That is incredibly powerful. And considering that there was the Teferi Hero of Dominaria issue, I figured that they would maybe calm down on this whole Teferi shit. They did not. The static abilities on the Planeswalkers, I love them. I think they're incredibly cool. I think they're making some of them a little too powerful, and this is the case. Teferi is very tough to deal with. You're going to have creatures out that have haste and can attack that turn, or you're going to have the advantage on them when they drop the Teferi. But at 3 in blue and white, control colors, it's not hard to see it. It's an issue. I think this should just be flat out banned. I didn't really look in to see what it's doing in other formats because I don't care. Standard, it is very, very, very hard to deal with. And it's so narrow when it comes in. If you do not have a creature advantage, and I'm not just talking about like 2 creatures so you can survive the one being sent back. I'm talking about out-creaturing your opponent's creatures and then having enough after that to go at Teferi. If you do not have that, you are going to have issues. And your instants lose that ability to be instants. You are truly in a terrible spot when this card drops. Well, let's go ahead and stick with the Planeswalkers, and let's talk about Nisa, who shakes the world. And she has shaken the world of Standard. At 3 colorless and 2 green, this legendary Planeswalker comes in with 5 loyalty. Again, static ability, seeing a theme. They're very cool to have static abilities on these Planeswalkers, but we have to be careful. Because Nisa, her static ability is whenever you tap a forest for mana, add an additional forest to your mana pool. Or green, whatever you want to call it. So the +1. Put 3 +1/+1 counters on up to 1 target non-creature land you control. Untap it. It becomes an elemental creature with vigilance and haste that's still a land. The -8, you get an emblem, which, keep in mind, boys and girls, there are no ways to remove emblems. Your lands are indestructible. Search your library for any number of forest cards and put them on the battlefield tapped. Okay. A lot of stuff to digest there. And why is it an issue? Well, the static ability doubles your mana. So that's an issue. The +1/+1's not too bad. It has a way to protect itself. But most players are going to be willing to give up a land when they can double with its static ability. The -8 is really where I get a little annoyed. There's no way to remove emblems. This card has got a great way to protect itself. And you're offering your opponent, or you're offering the player who gets this on the battlefield, like 3-4 turns. And then, boom. They can flood the battlefield with any number of forest cards. So it doesn't just have to be basic forest. It can be anything. And with all the combos that leads to, and with Standard having, or with her having the ability to create all these creatures that can basically outduel creatures in Standard, and they're going to be indestructible. This bitch is shaking the world. Simple as that. Another one that I think should be banned. You're going to notice that a lot of blue, green, a little bit of white. The power is a little bit too skewed for those colors right now. And I think Nisa is a big part of the problem. All right, so let's do the last card, and this is the. It should be one of these two cards. So the first nominee is going to be Hydroid Crisis. It's an X spell, green and blue. Oh, God, Simic. Jellyfish Hydra Beast. When you cast a spell, you gain half of X life, and you draw half of X cards, rounded down each time. It has fly and trample, and enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. That is a huge, huge threat. Huge threat. Pretty much once they start playing stuff, if they get this out turn 5, turn 6, that thing is tough to deal with. Flying and trample do not make it much simpler. I hate to say that it needs banned, but because it's in the blue-green colors, Simic is way too overpowered. Now, the other card that we're going to talk about is Euro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. Again, with the Simic colors, but this one is one colorless, one green, one blue. Legendary creature, Elder Giant, 6/6. When Euro enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless it escaped. Just so you guys are clear, escape is the ability where basically you can just keep bringing these bad boys back from your graveyard as long as you can satisfy the payment requirements at the bottom there. Euros is 2 green, 2 blue, and exile 5 other cards. However, both when you first cast it and every time it escapes, whenever Euro enters the battlefield or attacks, you gain 3 life and you draw a card. Then you may put a land from your hand onto the battlefield. Again, not tapped, whatever. So they did a few right things here. They made it a 6/6. They didn't give them trample or flying or any of that other shit. And I think the escape cost is about right. You've got unique colors. You've got 5 cards to exile from your graveyard. The reason that this and Hydroid Crisis make the list for me is that one of them has to go. Simic is way too powerful, and there's too many decks that run one of or both of these, along with Reclamation. A lot of the cards you've actually seen here today, all of them but Torbran, could be in a deck that you face on Arena easily anytime you play Ranked Standard. So I think that when you look at it, like Simic, blue-green, splash some white, those 3 colors right now have a lot of advantages on the rest of the field, and that's what I identify as part of the biggest issue with Standard, is that there's this color combination, and look at the prices of Shocklands if you don't believe me. Like Rakdos, because it's aggro and it has that stupid cat oven combo, which I didn't put the oven on here. I should have put Witch's Oven on here. I know that. I just didn't have the heart to do it. I'm like, you know what? Everyone else is doing it. But the black-red and the blue-green Shocklands are going up in value. Blue-green is very much tied to the fact that, well, good grief, Simic is good. Simic can draw cards, gain life, put lands in the battlefield that aren't tapped. Simic is good. Sorry, I really hate playing these decks at this point because they're very similar, and it's very tough to just outduel them. So yeah, there you go. That's my picks. There's a few cards that I wanted to put in. Like I said, I could have talked about Witch's Oven, but I didn't feel like dealing with it. I don't know, there's a couple other cards I'm really not a big fan of. Narset, Jace, Wielder of Memories, I think is one of them. There's a few. But I don't think there's bad. That new Thassa's Oracle or whatever, that game winner, that shouldn't have never, ever been created. But yeah, a lot of these cards, I think that some of these would have been okay if they would have printed them in EDH supplemental products. They did not. They brought them into the standard environment because they wanted to sell packs. They wanted to buff up the power level. And in the case of Simic right now, they pretty much rocked the power level balance to their favor, so much so that if you don't start banning cards, like, I don't know what they're going to do, I guess. I don't know how they fix it. And it's unfortunate because Standard should not have this many bans in it, and players should not have to be waiting for ban announcements. That's another video. But these are the cards I truly believe biggest problems in Standard. Get them gone, and then let's kind of see if we can maybe shake it down and see what else is really causing issues. But tell me what you guys think. I mean, if you think these are the right cards, if you think there's a couple I missed, I want to hear what you guys have to say. I really appreciate the listens, the views, the attention, the whole shebang. You guys are awesome. My name is Tony K. This is Urban Girl Scout Media, living the dream as always.